Hi everyone, and welcome to this review of Mend the Guns. I would like to begin by saying that despite everything being said in this review, I think Mend the Guns is a great expansion, and its model should be adopted for other titles too. This expansion was announced on 19th of May 2018, which is almost a year of development. When developers take their time and put the necessary effort into their games, it shows. And Mend the Guns, despite of its many flaws, is a content-rich addition to the game, and luckily, most of its flaws can be fixed with patches. Despite some annoyances, I had a great time playing the expansion, and we should as consumers encourage Paradox to release these types of expansions, instead of additions that we get for other games like EU4, which are shallow and unjustly expensive with regards to the content they offer. So that was my 2 cents on game development. Let's set sail and see what Mend the Guns is all about. Okay, so let's begin. Mend the Guns is a very big expansion which adds a lot of content. We get a lot of new leaders for our nations. For example, as the Netherlands and the United Kingdom, we can get our monarchs in power, which is quite a cool addition. Also, we can get monarchs in the USA in power. And for example, as the United Kingdom, you can form the Commonwealth, basically annexing all of your colonies. There are also a lot of new events in the game, and we also get new units to play around with, although personally I haven't really got to experience these just yet. Now unfortunately the naval changes aren't perfect and they will require a lot of polishing, and I will talk about that later in the review. Another great addition that I liked is the ability to drill your armies and air forces. So now you can get a naval and air experience by doing this, and you also improve the performance of these units in combat without actually engaging in war. So you can get them more ready for combat once war actually breaks out. Another feature that I liked are the governments in exile, but like the naval systems and changes, it is a bit flawed and lacks some clarity, and also something that will need to be patched. I will get to that later in the review as well. But it is a nice addition to the game that offers a whole new way of playing after your country has capitulated, and will mostly be used in multiplayer probably. The expansion also offers a lot of new map modes, so finally we can see stuff like ideology at a glance of all countries in the world. We also get map modes to see terrain in the game, which shows both the naval and land terrain. There's also a map mode to show the distribution of population, and a map mode that allows us to see the level of infrastructure in the world as well. We also get new focus trees for the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Now, I mostly like the Netherlands and the United Kingdom focus trees. The USA one felt strange, and I will explain exactly what I mean later in this review. So that was a list of the main features in Mend the Guns that I enjoyed. Now note that some of these features are a bit incomplete or sometimes difficult to understand, and that's what I want to talk about now, things that annoyed me in Mend the Guns and which could be improved upon. First of all, let's talk about the Congress system for the United States. Now, as an idea, it's a very nice idea, and if it was implemented a bit differently, I think it could have worked better. So currently you need both the Senate and the House support to activate certain branches of your focus tree, right? So for example, if I want to go with limited intervention for the United States, I will need the support of 58 senators and 261 representatives. Now, the way you get their support is done via events and via decisions that you can activate here. So for example, I can go for medium lobbying effort, and I will gain political power slower, and when the timer runs out, I will get 5 senators and 25 representatives, and then I can activate the focus tree decision. Now, the only problem with this is that basically you're just playing with numbers, and unfortunately these numbers are a bit random. The main issue with this are these events that pop up from time to time, where the game just announces that you just lost support without you having any control over it, right? So this random event comes up and it says up to 4 senators will go into opposition, and here 20 representatives will go into opposition. Now, you don't have any control over these. So even if you invest the political power and you try to get support, you may not get it because of some random factors that you don't have control over. I think it would be much better if we had certain options in here, right? So I'm okay with events limiting and making this system a little bit random so that it doesn't get overpowered and you just get support all the time, and then the system kind of becomes obsolete. But it would be nicer if we had some options here. So for example, that I could invest some more political power to reduce the amount of senators that go into opposition. Same for this with the representatives in the House. This would give the player a much better feeling of control over this random system, which right now he has no control over and which severely limits his ability to use the focus tree. So that is my biggest concern with the Congress system. There are also events and decisions which allow you to gain support by building certain structures in certain states. But overall, the system feels a bit too random and can cause quite a bit of frustration after you've invested some political power and you just lose it for no apparent reason, or a very random reason that you as the player don't really have much control over. Okay, now let's talk about the naval stuff. So naval combat for me personally is still quite confusing. I'm still not clear how the whole system works. Now it might be me, but I think that I'm not the only one who is confused by all of the stuff that's going on in here. And this is one thing that seems to be a core issue, and I'm not sure that it will be fixed or changed much in the future. Getting your head wrapped about how naval combat works in Hearts of Iron 4 is quite a gruesome task. I guess that if I had devoted some time for this and learned the system in a very profound way, I would be able to figure things out and perhaps even master the system. But for new players coming into the game who are not naval experts, I guess, this could be a total disaster, which is a shame because you can clearly see that the developers have put quite a lot of time into the system, into improving it. It's definitely different than how it was before Mend the Guns, but unfortunately it's still not clear enough and can be quite confusing. Another thing which is quite confusing is the naval interface. So the naval interface is actually quite loaded with buttons and there's a lot of stuff going on in here. But the main issue that I have a problem with is this thing here on the, I guess these are the naval theaters. And you have all of these icons, which if you click on them, they select different aspects of your task force or fleet. I'm still not completely sure about the difference between these two, or if there are two of them, or maybe it's the same thing. What really confuses me is that when I click on this thing, it selects the Admiral, and it shows me, I guess, all the ships that are under his command. But then if I click here, then I can see that there are 11 ships here. But when I click here, it doesn't select all of these, right? So I would expect to see it something like for these to light up if I am indeed selecting this whole group. Also, there's something called reserve fleets, and I still don't know what they're for, or how to use them, or why it's better, or what's the benefit of having a reserve fleet. This is quite sad, because I know that the developers have put quite a lot of time into making this system more user-friendly, but for me it just doesn't work. It still feels very complicated, indeed even frustrating to figure out, and it leads to a lot of cases where I'm just, okay, fuck this, I'm not gonna deal with this, I don't really care. And that's unfortunate because naval combat has been quite a big thing in this time period, and I wish that it was much more accessible and easier to understand than it currently is. I hope very much that in the upcoming patches and updates we will get to see some improvement in this regard. Another thing that annoyed me is that when you build ships, it doesn't really explain what you need to add to the ship design for you to build it. So let's say that, for example, I want to build this 1936 cruiser hull. So I click on Create Variant, and currently I can't really build it because design lacks one or more required modules. Okay, what are the required modules? Am I just expected to know that? Why isn't it explained here? So I'll just go ahead and, for example, add one of these. I still can't do it because design lacks one or more required modules. Is it this one? Is it this one? Maybe it's this one. Nope, it's none of these. I'm already up to 20 points of naval experience, and I still can't build this design. Still lacks something that prevents me from building it. So as you can see, it lacks explanation, it lacks clarity. So I don't really know how to deal with this. And that's unfortunate because this is a very basic thing. This is about building ships. Why is it so complicated? Why isn't it explained properly? Another issue is the whole approach to repairing your ships. So currently there is something called a naval repair queue. And in here you can add or remove shipyards. Now, to be honest, I don't know what this means. Okay, so there's 12, there's 18. Which dockyards are these? Is it this one? Is it this one? Where are the ships are getting repaired? What does this button do? Right? So, okay, I see that it changes some icons. What is the meaning of this? The whole system lacks a lot of clarity and it can be very frustrating. The last problem that I want to mention with regards to the naval additions to the game is how mines work. So when I was playing my Netherlands game, I took care to mine the coastlines in Indonesia to prevent the Japanese from landing on my coasts, but that apparently had no effect. So as you can see, I have mines here, but that doesn't prevent the Japanese from landing on my shores and taking territory. Maybe I did it incorrectly, but the graphic is here, so I assume there are mines. But apparently mines don't affect transports. Those transports can just go through them and just land on your shores. This is another thing that needs some clarification. I should have an indicator, right? So for example, when I click here, I see 9% of our mines on naval supremacy. That's fine. How many divisions will get destroyed by these mines when they try to land on my coasts? I would like to know that. Do I need to put more mines? Is 10% enough? Again, clarity is something which is missing on a lot of these new features, and This is something that I am optimistic about because that can be resolved. Now for something which should not be resolved in this game. Let's talk about decolonization. Now the United Kingdom has certain aspects of its focus tree which are dedicated to decolonization. And to be honest, I don't think they should be there. I did a playthrough with Australia just to experience the new features as a vanilla country. And the United Kingdom has decided to decolonize most of its colonies. And that led to some quite interesting results. One of them being that a lot of these African countries have the same leader portrait, which is, I guess, understandable, but it looks weird, especially when it's not something featured in a mod, but in a full priced product from a game developer. And even countries like India and Pakistan apparently have somebody who is called Muhammad Ali Jinnah. But if memory serves right, Ali Jinnah did not look like that. And he did not have a twin who was ruling India named Shushila Verma. Okay? So, in my opinion, decolonization is not part of this time period. And if Paradox are or have decided to include it, then they should include it properly, you know, not as a half-baked feature. Certainly not something that will give us something like this. In my opinion, the current implementation of decolonization doesn't do the whole process justice. And if Paradox aren't really going to take this whole thing too seriously, which I personally do not expect them to, since it's not part of this time period, then they should not include it at all, because I don't want to see stuff like this. This is just immersion breaking, and it completely destroys the whole experience of the game. So please, Paradox, don't do this. Another feature which seems to suffer from clarity issues, and a feature which is trying to collect different situations into one place, and that sort of creates different and weird results, are the governments in exile. So for example, here I am a government in exile as the Netherlands, and I can access this screen, and I have my legitimacy number. So as you can see, I get a 10% attack and defense bonus against the Germans, and my legitimacy is 94. Now these bonuses don't change, so when my legitimacy was 20, I still got 10% bonus, which is a bit odd. I also see these numbers here. Now this screen is probably shared for both the government in exile and the host country, in this case the United Kingdom. And these numbers are confusing since I don't really know how they affect me. Okay, so why am I seeing information which is not really relevant to me? There's a bar here of legitimacy which fills, and this actually gives me certain events where I get some leaders for my armies, which have a bonus to fight against the country which is currently occupying my territory. Now the problem with this is that the Netherlands, and if we, for example, take Poland as another example, while they're both governments in exile, they're different governments in exile, because as the Netherlands, I do have territory that I still control. So I would personally prefer to get bonuses to industry and being able to rebuild an army, while a country like Poland would benefit more from really having stronger leaders while they wait for the allies to attack Germany. I have territory, but if I did not develop this territory, it doesn't really help me with building up an army, right? So the governments in exile don't seem to make a difference between an exiled government which still holds some territory and governments like Poland that don't have any actual territory until it is liberated by the Allies. Playing as the Netherlands, I encountered something strange. So the Netherlands focus tree has an option called Request Allied Favors. And the requirements for this is that we're in a faction with the United Kingdom and we have either not capitulated, or if we did, we have 40 legitimacy. What this focus does is grant you access to these decisions called Request Allied Favors, in which you can ask for different bonuses for your nation. You can get some equipment, you can get some off-map military and civilian factories, and other cool bonuses. What's weird about this is that this is separate from the government in exile interface. I would expect to see here, as a government in exile, options to request from my host country various bonuses that I can get so that I can fight to reclaim my lost territory. But here it's implemented in this strange way. Now I understand why, because this one is intended for a scenario where you have not capitulated as well, right? So you would not have access to this interface. But if I am capitulated, this interface should have a bit more options which allow me to interact with my host. Because currently it's very strange. I mean, you're hosted by this other country, but you have zero options to communicate with them or to have any requests sent to them to help you reclaim your lost territory. Neither here in the diplomatic options, or as you have seen in the interface itself, it's just numbers that go up and random events that pop and give you bonuses, which is quite a shame because I expected there to be more interaction between the host country and the government in exile. I'll wrap up this review with some bugs that I encountered. Now, luckily I didn't encounter any major game-breaking bugs, and I do understand that this is a matter of opinion. For some people, the things that I just showed are game-breaking. But for me, the whole experience as a whole was quite positive, despite the issues that I mentioned. I'd like to begin with the fact that Japan still dominates China completely, and fuel, or the introduction of fuel, doesn't seem to have stopped this steamroller from completely destroying China. And that is a shame. Hopefully it will be tweaked so that China will be, as it was in reality, a much tougher opponent to beat, which will require greater efforts from Japan. Now, I suspect that because of the introduction of fuel, Japan isn't really building any more planes and armored mobile units. It just throws a lot of infantry at China. If Japan can really defeat China simply with infantry, that is not historically correct, because what gave the Japanese the advantage was their much more technologically advanced army and navy over the Chinese. Another thing that I noticed is the complete obsession of Romania with Poland. So in many of my games, Romania has joined a faction created by Poland, and as a result, they were completely crushed by Germany instead of joining Germany as a member of the Axis. And I'm only mentioning this because I did play the historical path, so I did expect to see more historical outcomes. And another minor bug is that the Netherlands can release a nation called ABC Republic. This one obviously is supposed to be the Caribbean territories controlled by the Netherlands. Okay, so how do I summarize this review? Mend the Guns is a very content-rich expansion. It took almost a year to develop, and it shows that the developers have put a lot of effort into creating all of this content. There are issues with how this new content is presented, and there are some bugs. which don't really allow the game to work with the new content properly. Also, the AI seems to have some difficulties with how it handles the new mechanics. Now, I'm personally optimistic since I think that these issues can be resolved, or most of these issues can be resolved with patches, and I'm sure that we will see Hearts of Iron, and especially the features that were introduced in Mend the Guns, improve tremendously. I enjoyed playing Mend the Guns, and I have even played countries that I have never played before, like the Netherlands, and some of its features are very fun when they work and when things click together well. But the bottom line, if you are wondering if you should get this expansion and if it's worth its price, then I would say yes, it's definitely worth its price, and it adds a lot to the game. Hopefully some of these features will be changed and improved by Paradox so that we can enjoy them even more. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next video, lesson, or tutorial in the Iron Workshop. Bye. Hey guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. It helps the channel grow. Check out these other videos on the Iron Workshop that you might enjoy as well. Please consider supporting the Iron Workshop on Patreon. This will allow the channel to grow and become even better. Thank you.